We're live, guys.
We're gonna call the meeting to
That's the
order.
deal.
You and the main medical doctor for the coronavirus, what's his name?
Well, not quite in
He just
public
had surgery.
comment yet,
Yeah.
and we called the meeting to order.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. How about the minutes of the August 13th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion on the minutes? Looks good. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. If anyone has any conflict of interest, just let us know when the paper comes up. Are there any public comments?
We do have some public comments, Mr. Chair. I'm going to unmute and Sherry Norgard, do you wish to make a public comment?
Yes, I do.
You did.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much for allowing me to make a public comment. First of all, I just want to mention that I am a resident of Polk County and have been for 30 years. I currently live at 911 Ridgewood Drive in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin. And my comment is related to the Polk County Fairgrounds expansion plan to add an NTPA track to the north side of the fairgrounds. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but there are also other people that share my sentiments. I'd like to state for the record that I'm opposed. Actually, I'd like to start with the annual Polk County Fair, which I've attended in my all 30 years being here. An annual event that I look forward to and support wholeheartedly. Even the demolition derby and the tractor pull, that is a loud event and goes quite late into the night. We know that it's only during a 1 week period, and it's something that we all feel is part of the culture of where we live. I am opposed to the expansion at the fairground of an NTPA track and adding this motorsport to a residential area. My main concerns regarding this are the excessive and dangerous noise that tractor pulls, especially NTPA tractor pulls, have. What was that? I can't hear that.
Just continue, ma'am.
Okay. I oppose to the dangerous and excessive noise, the toxic smoke, and the impact on the overall environment in our neighborhoods. There are several residents around this area that is being proposed. My other concern was I became aware of it a week before it was brought to the Planning Commission for the conditional use permit. What concerned me the most is that Cedar Corps basically talked during the meeting. There was a fair board representative and a county board representative at that meeting. Cedar Corps did most of the talking. I felt that the fair board representative, I can't think of her name, had learned about it also and didn't seem to really understand the plan. And there was very little, it didn't seem like it was a cohesive plan between the county board supervisors and the woman from the fair board, which kind of concerned me because I wasn't sure, who was in charge of pushing this through. We're really concerned about the fact that the county wants to change the scope of the 104-year-old Polk County Fair into a motorsport event with several other events occurring during the course of a summer. And we totally support the continuation of the annual fair and the tractor pull during, that one weekend per month. The other thing that concerned me was there was a rush to get the track started. I realized that part of starting the track is to raise funds to cover other expenses, but I don't think that's a good plan. We are asking for an environmental impact study and health and safety study. It seems like there's no infrastructure around this track. We're just putting the track in and then building the infrastructure around it. We're concerned about traffic in our neighborhoods of semis coming in with tractors, the excessive congestion on Simonson Road, people coming into town and basically staying on the fairgrounds. We don't believe that it will really make an economic impact positively in St. Croix Falls.
We'll allow 3 minutes.
Okay, my final comment is that we hope that you'll consider not putting an NTPA track on our pristine land near our homes, churches, schools, trails, and preserving the wildlife and serenity of our neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
We got one more. Joe Pelton.
Hi, thank you. Apologies.
Go ahead, Joel.
All right, thank you very much. I could talk about the concerns for our drinking water or our roads or property values or the sanctity of taking a hike at dusk without a ringing in your ears. But I don't have a lot of time, so I want to talk about something really important. I want to talk about hearing impairment and dementia. We're talking about the single biggest modifiable risk factor here. 1 in 10 cases of arguably the worst thing that can happen to a person and their family. And this is the cause. It's well studied, and here's how it works. When the ear is exposed to sounds over 85 decibels, it starts to get damaged, and only 15 minutes at 100 decibels can cause lasting hearing impairment. The louder the noise, the longer the exposure, exponentially worse the damage gets. This damage impairs communication between the ear and the brain. The brain starts to compensate and it gets overloaded. Over time, strain on the brain adds up, and 10 years later, you're up to 5 times more likely to have dementia. It's been well studied, published peer-reviewed scientific literature, and by federal subject matter experts. Physics and medical research on the topic tell us that during NTPA events, if hosted at the fairgrounds, nearly every St. Croix Falls resident would be threatened by this health risk in the privacy of their home. For those of us who live a little closer to the fairgrounds, we're going to have to make a serious decision about whether to be forced out and abandon our properties and our lives here, or risk potentially life-changing consequences for us and, more importantly, our families. Again, NTPA events will expose residents to over 100 decibels for 3 to 4 hours, in some cases multiple days in a row. There's no question this is bad for our health. It's plain and simple. Stress, diabetes, heart disease, and especially hearing loss, which again is the primary modifiable risk factor leading to dementia. Modifiable risks are supposed to be things that you can control, but this plan specifically creates a world where St. Croix Falls residents are not able to make that decision. Instead, this critical decision impacting, in some cases, vulnerable populations, including our valuable seniors in our community, as well as residents at the rehabilitation facility across the street. I mean, this decision is your responsibility now. It's a heavy burden to bear, to be sure. If I could make a deal where I knew that my loved ones would be up to 5 times less likely to be destroyed by dementia, I would make that deal, and I think you would too. And you can do that for us. You can protect us from this inevitability. You just have to not make this particular deal and not place this venue in this particular place. This issue has really brought our community together. It's caused a level of public engagement that I've heard some officials say they've never seen before. We love our community. We love the tradition of the fair. And let's be clear, we're here to protect those things. We're not against an NTPA track in Polk County. We just know that it's not appropriate or safe for a residential area, any residential area.
Couple more seconds, Joel. You're 3 minutes.
Thank you. We want economic progress in our community, and we want to see the government generate the funds it needs to maintain and improve our infrastructure. But God Almighty, we don't make that deal if it means the health and well-being of our families and the people in our community. We ask that you please focus your energy and our tax dollars on finding a better path forward. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Joel.
We have one more that just joined in, Mr. Chair.
Riley, you have a public comment?
Riley Pelton.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I do. My name is Riley Pelton. I'm a PhD research scientist with a background in public health. I'm submitting this comment on behalf of my family and neighbors. And as residents of St. Croix Falls, we are seriously concerned about the potential health risks facing our community if the proposal were to go forward. NTPA events have been scientifically studied and found to represent a serious proximity-based health hazard. People attending these events do so at their own risks with the ability to leave the venue if concerned for their health, but local residents will be exposed to this risk against our will. Many residents will be unable to relocate during the events due to extenuating medical and economic circumstances, including residents of senior living and rehabilitation facilities right across the street from the proposed track. If you approve this plan, you'll be significantly impacting our quality of life by increasing morbidity and mortality risks facing our families. Severe noise exposure threatens our health, leading to stress, diabetes, coronary disease, hearing impairment, and dementia, as Joe has mentioned. Studies have shown that compared to individuals with normal hearing, those with mild, moderate, and severe hearing impairment had a 2, 3, and 5-fold increased risk of dementia. And it's, as he said, the top modifiable risk factor, contributing to 9% of all cases. Considering our senior community in immediately adjacent and surrounding residential areas, these events will pose an unreasonable health risk, and an alternative location should be seriously considered. The CDC and OSHA have set maximum noise exposure standards based on decades of scientific studies suggesting that a person can be safely exposed to a noise level of 100 decibels for only 15 minutes before health is negatively impacted. And for every 3 decibel increase, allowable exposure time is cut in half. NTPA events, which carry the slogan "Feel the Noise," produce 120 decibels near the grandstand. And with events lasting 3 to 4 hours, this creates far greater exposure for far longer than is considered safe. Noise of 120 decibels would need to travel 20,000 feet before dissipating to safe levels, an area encompassing 4,000 people and thousands more visitors and tourists. Based on local policy and national health guidelines, this plan will result in an unacceptable health risk for thousands of residents. Additionally, the proposed track is designed to drain runoff into a pond immediately adjacent to the city drinking water supply, potentially threatening the city's water quality. This plan has not been studied for environmental or human health impact, and these studies should be required prior to making any decisions to develop. Please strongly consider that the Polk County Fairgrounds, located within a zoned residential area, is an inappropriate location to host recurring National Circuit tractor pull events, especially considering the vulnerable populations that live across the street to the proposed venue. We urge you to consider a more appropriate non-residential location. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comments?
That's all the listed comments.
All right. Do we have any information from supervisors not seated as committee members? There's a couple here. Go ahead.
Want to at the podium, or can I stand here by myself?
You can stand there.
What's that?
Whatever works best for you.
We're comfortable over here. Feel like I'm on a soapbox up there, and I'm on a soapbox. So I'm discussing. We have this right to discuss information from supervisors, and it's under 9B and E. I'll try and tie those together. And your agenda says discussion regarding the roles of supervisors and staff with regards to committee proceedings. Then you have discussion and possible action regarding resolution 3420. Well, if you look back at your last meeting and some of the comments that were made and were about other supervisors, and you go back and read the rules of order, and you read them and you read them, and I have read them over and over, and you're making suggestions that we need to stop supervisors from talking to each other. We need to talk to supervisors from talking to the staff. Where in the rules of order does that come from this committee? It should come at the beginning of our term in April, which we did with the rules of order. So I think you need to sit down and look at what your role is here and quit bashing other supervisors out in the public. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart, because I'm quite offended right now at what's going on. And I think you guys should just slow down and look at each other and discuss this when you get to hear about where we're going in this direction. Hey, that's about all I got to say.
You had something?
Yes, I just want to say I support what Supervisor Rowdy has said. In my review of the shape of the last executive committee meeting, I'm concerned that there was a very vague agenda item that led to inappropriate and specific discussion about certain supervisors that could easily be identified. I'm also concerned that as supervisors, we should all work together. And I think that there was a lot of conjecture and opinions that were presented as fact that I think are disputable. However, the people that it was directed at didn't have an opportunity to do that. I think some of the statements and comments made were inflammatory, and it was better a discussion for a closed session with the affected parties being able to participate at that time. So also, I looked at the rules of order. I agree with Doug that I don't see necessarily what defines the role of the executive committee to take that on. So I agree with Supervisor Rowdy that maybe that would need to be examined and maybe to consider to treat other people the way that you would like to be treated and how you would feel if you became the subject of a public discussion that is inflammatory as well. Thank you.
Any other supervisors not needed as committee members have any information to present?
I have an item, and I will bring it up also at the General Government Committee that follows this one, Mike Richard. Looking at the agenda, there is the fairgrounds on it with closed session. And I'm concerned on the General Government Committee agenda, and I think also on the Executive Committee's agenda for this meeting, that there's no public open discussion about some of the issues that are out there. And I've raised this question in other situations, but I think we should have a good reason for going into closed session. And I looked at the Wisconsin guidelines on public meeting laws, and there are specified exceptions, and I'm not sure that what we're going to be talking about here or in the General Government Committee is within any of those exceptions. It may well be, but that would have to be spelled out. I'm not aware of what the issues are. And I think we owe it to the public that we open and they know what's going on in our body here, unless we've got some relatively narrow exceptions that are going up.
All right, thank you. We're looking for announcements and committee information. No clue why that's on there. Anyone have any announcements or committee information?
Mr. Chair. I don't know where this would fit in. I think it's pertinent to the general public and to our committee in response to the fairgrounds. I attended a tractor.
Chair, I think we should just do it under 11 because you could do update regarding fairground project. And then it
Yeah.
says we go into closed session, so we could talk then.
I thought I would address it there, but I wanted to ask that if that would be all right.
Yeah. All right, what's going on with the Clam Falls Dam?
Okay, thank you. As you know, we've kind of been in a holding pattern now for a couple of months. Per the resolution, I was investigating ways that, are there any other ways that this could be saved? And talking with all the parties involved, the one that has emerged is a private company, power and real estate company, negotiating with Northwest Electric. Northwest Electric would turn over the ownership of the dam. In return, they would also buy power from Northwest Electric. That's what I've been told. But it has been in a holding pattern for quite a while. It does not answer the question. Northwest Electric has told the Clam Falls Flowage Association that we don't want to own it. They said, but we will, if we get a deal with Northwest Electric, we'll let you own it. And you just have to, you being the Flowage Association, you just have to make the annual payments of whatever those are determined to be. We've estimated about $30,000 a year. Clam Falls Flowage Association does not have a plan yet to pay that $30,000, but I think they are proceeding to hope that this deal does go through. Then they will lobby various communities, the county, and so on to help pay the approximately $30,000 a year. The challenge with that is that $30,000 is for maintenance, insurance, and so on, and then a little bit of escrow for the future. What it doesn't account for is what happens if there's a 10-inch rain right over the Clam Falls flowage right now, and it overflows and causes damage. So it's, the people I've talked with have said this is a very expensive proposition, but if Northwest Electric seems eager to transfer ownership, but so far they haven't done anything with anyone.
Was the DNR going to hold off on the drawdown?
The DNR is actually taking longer than anticipated. We don't know why, but they are delaying the drawdown of this. The Army Corps of Engineers has had they ask for public input about the drawdown. The unfortunate part is the public doesn't know what will happen after the drawdown. They don't know about the reclamation strategy. And so the public has gone to the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers and asked, we need a public forum where we can get this out in discussion. So they're kind of working on putting together a public forum is my impression. We had hoped to delay this till maybe next year so that a legislature could propose getting funds to repair the dam. It's actually being delayed on its own. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen in 2 or 3 months or 6 months, but it is being delayed.
All right. We're not really doing anything at this point.
I think in terms of the county, what I'd recommend is allow me to just continue communications with the interested parties so that I can stay on top of it. The biggest obstacle again is whoever takes over and repairs this dam, is someone going to be willing to pay the annual costs? And so far, nobody has stepped up to do that.
You don't feel that at this point we would need to direct this to a committee? I mean, is there a committee that should be working on this or just the administrator?
Yeah, I mean, so who currently doesn't environmental services deal with like Atlas Dam, Kennedy? Doesn't that go through dams and waterways through environmental services? Why wouldn't they just get the updates and the briefings on it? Why
Well,
wouldn't
get it in a committee, and then if it needs some attention or work,
because it's really not our issue at executive. I agree.
I think if there is further information, share it with environmental services.
I agree.
That's good.
All right. Looks like this one's going to be a chore. Who's taking the role on the nuisance ordinance? Or we just need to get it, we need to refer it to the appropriate committee.
I think it has been referred to the Health and Human Services Committee already, and they discussed it. I think their next step is to create with Bob Kazmierski's help and Tanya's, to develop a working group, because the nuisance ordinance doesn't just affect Health and Human Services, it affects environmental services, law enforcement. So we are going to create a working group and begin working through Health and Human Services.
we addressed that at our meeting on Tuesday, and we discussed that pretty much at length, that there's so many components to that. Townships are involved in basically the most complaints. So we want some comments from the Towns Association, from the Sheriff's Department, the legal ramifications of it. So yeah, we're right on top of it, and we agreed that it would be on our agenda again next month.
Sounds good.
Work in progress.
Yep, good deal. All right, who would like to handle discussion regarding the roles of supervisors and staff with regards to committee proceedings?
Well, I could throw my 2 cents in on that for right now, and then listening to the other supervisors talk about it is, maybe it's appropriate, to reset. I'm new as county board chair, right? We have a new administrator, and, some of the things that have come up in the last few months, I think it may be better appropriate is that, maybe a recommendation to go through our rules of order again. One supervisor had asked about kind of creating a basic sheet that's, a very simple form of, this is what you should do if this situation. I think a lot of it is probably a little bit of not really knowing, what's the right way to get something done. And then, some folks think, hey, this is the way you get it done. And some folks think this is the way you get it done. And some supervisors say this is the way you get it done. And I think that's probably most of the issue is just not knowing when it's appropriate to go to corporation counsel or go to administrator or staff, because I have heard a lot of comments about how there's a lot of things being happened and a lot of staff being called. And I know the administrator had to respond to 2 different letters or requests last month on supervisors asking staff to do stuff or requesting things that did go through a committee. And they're just kind of, one was 4 supervisors asking for something, and one was one other separate supervisor, not part of the 4. So we've had 5 supervisors kind of been told, hey, that's not really the right way you do it. You got to run it through a committee, and, you got to get, I think the biggest the issue is that the way I understand it is we're supposed to go to the administrator. That's the only person we're supposed to be going to if we got issues, or corporation counsel for help with a resolution or something like that. And or get it on your agenda. Talk to the chairs of your committees, and whatever you want to discuss and deal with, get it on a committee so it's in the public. It's about being upfront. And I think part of it is just the process of what do you do when you have a problem with something or you want to ask a question. And I just think maybe it would help to just do another kind of, everyone seems like they have a different opinion about it. So I don't, that's why I think it's probably on here. I don't know why it's on here, but I'm guessing that's why it was on here. We talked about it last month. I don't know. That's my comments about it.
So one thing I seen a little different this term was we never really had an orientation. And in the past, we've had like intense orientation, like the entire day. And you go through, how we can get ourselves in trouble by not being transparent, and, walking quorums, and our role as supervisors, and how we deal with staff. And there was a time that the county board, we didn't have an administrator. The county board was like the administrator. Well, we turned that over. We gave that authority away. We gave it to the administrator. And I agree with you, Chris. Really, we only have one person that we're in charge of, and that's the administrator. And then the administrator is in charge of the staff. So I agree. I mean, I think without that orientation, and it seems like it's getting more and more lax every year. You know, the new supervisors come in, they get like nothing. They just get thrown into committees and put to work. And that's not how it used to be. And so maybe we need to kind of get back to that where we have a day, that orientation where everyone is there and kind of all get retrained again, what our roles are.
And we have 2 new supervisors that just came on a month or so ago that were
Yeah.
appointed. So
Yeah,
we're talking 4 or 5 new supervisors. And I remember when I became a supervisor, they kept telling us, hey, one of these days, we're gonna show everyone around the county. And in my 5 years, 6 years now, almost being here,
Yeah.
that day still hasn't come where someone says, hey, why don't you come over here and we're gonna show you the health department, we're gonna introduce you to everyone, we're gonna walk you to here and walk you to here and show you the
We
highway.
actually toured the jail and
Yeah.
we toured everything. And we were introduced to
Yeah,
department heads and
hasn't happened for me yet, and I've been waiting for
so
about
maybe
5
we need
years.
to either make that happen now. It's probably not too late.
I don't think it's too late.
Make it happen.
Clearly,
now.
there's an issue, and I think we should make a recommendation, and I would make a recommendation, and I'm sure it's just a consensus that the administrator puts that together and sets that up. And maybe we do it at a committee of the whole, and we can do it before another county board meeting. Maybe it's not gonna get this month, maybe it could be. But I think we better get a handle on it, because I hear from staff that supervisors are calling them or sending them emails. Staff, below directors even. And I hear from directors that supervisors are contacting them about questions. And they're not doing it in the committee, and after a committee meeting's over, yeah, you spend a little time talking in the hall, but then there's requests of them and information. So I can use an example this week. I had a question about the process we're in with the Star Trail. I had some people call me and ask me, and it needed to go up to the state level. And before I followed up, I called the administrator up and said, hey, I've got these questions. I know it's Bob as the director of that department or one of the other employees, but what do you want me to do, administrator? I'm not comfortable talking to them without you telling me it's okay. So I talked to administrator. Administrator says, yes, I would call Bob. I'll let Bob know you're calling him. And that's how I do it now, because I've been told that's how you do it. So, and I think that's probably the struggle a little bit still. I think, I don't think supervisors understand that if you want something done or you want to ask somebody or you want to get something done, get it on an agenda or call the administrator up and get his approval to go talk to someone in the county. But I totally follow that. And I try never to go outside of that. And I think that's where the struggle is a little bit. And it could be anything. It's not just the hot button topics now that we're involved with. There's all kinds of other stuff that's happening. And I think staff is a little bit overwhelmed, and then staff meets in the hallway or gets this phone call and they're kind of like, oh, supervisor called me, I got to stop and talk to them. And it's not appropriate for us to be doing that. And I don't know how to tell everyone that. And and if I was the one that insulted people or people felt like they got picked on, I'm just responding to what I'm hearing as a chair. And I'm looking at the letters and I get my weekly briefings, I guess, or whatever you call it, on what's going on in the county every week and where the conflicts are and where there's hot button issues. And I constantly see this constant, it's kind of that seems to be the biggest issue, is staff, directors dealing with supervisors' requests. So that's what I think we gotta get a handle on somehow. And I think before we tackle rules of orders, I agree. I think we have another orientation and then having corporation counsel lay it out again on what these rules of order mean and what are we supposed to be doing, and maybe there needs to be things added to the rules of order that aren't there. I don't know.
Make a comment. Yep. Like Jay and I have served under many different, the 3 different forms of government. And yeah, it's all about orientation. We used to have a 2-day orientation, Jay. And,
We hired a,
yeah, we even had an outside firm that came in. We had government people that came in and said, this is what you do under this form of government. And our former administrator, Mr. Fry, he laid it out very clearly that the administrator, when you go to administrative form of government, he is in charge of everything. And the only role that we have as supervisors is the policy situation. And when it came to like the Malia or somebody like that, they laid it out very clearly. If you didn't follow those, how we were subject to censorship as a supervisor. That and that's where we're really lacking is the orientation, especially the new supervisors. But it was really harder for us, Jay, as you know, being involved in the other kind of government. That hey, now you don't have anything to say. This our administrator does everything. And if you talk to staff or department head about something that hadn't gone to your supervisor, you were subject to censorship. It's just, it's a whole new learning curve when administrator is hired to do his job and his role and our role within that. Thank you.
Wasn't it, John, even when you got back on the board, we were under an administrative rule at that time, and I feel you struggled with it.
Oh, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I had the hardest
We
time.
weren't in charge anymore.
I mean, you had to be so careful if you got a phone call from another supervisor or an outside person. You didn't give an opinion, and that was the role under. That's why you have the supervisor, and they get paid the big bucks. You know?
All right, well, let's do that then. Let's get something put together. Let's get an orientation. Let's get all 15 of us thinking the same on our roles and see if that helps.
And I'd just like to add, because I remember I got some calls over this lime quarry, and there's been some recent ones too, but that was in the past about certain employees and why they were being let go or why they were being moved from one department to another. And again, it's not the supervisor's role. And I think that's something too that is coming up now again. It's not the supervisor's role to question our I mean, sure, we can, there's a process on how we question it, but it's not our job to decide where a director of a department either decides to fire someone or move someone to a different department because they lost their job. And you got a disgruntled employee calling a supervisor up. It's not my job to go track down why you got let go. And I know that's an issue too. So I just, whatever this orientation is, I want to make sure that includes all those kinds of things.
And I think Vince, he said, my door is always open to the public, to supervisors.
Right. Go talk to administrator if you got a question about something. You might not always like what you get answered from them. I mean,
And if I may interject, before I took this job, I can remember observing some of the challenges that the board was having, and I would hear people talk, staff, citizens. And then during the goal setting process, the number one game changer was helping the board work better together. And I looked at that and said the biggest issue that I saw before I took this job was the trust among the group. I know we all know each other and respect each other, but there seemed to be a distrust of what so-and-so doing behind the scenes. And we have very passionate people on this board who feel very strongly about things. And what I saw was, what can happen is when a supervisor goes to a staff member, then the other supervisor says, well, I need to go to another staff member. And so by bringing it through me. It's not that I'm power crazed and I want everything through me. In fact, I got 4 tremendous division heads that I have total confidence in and respect for, and they can handle whatever issues come up, as well as my corporation counsel. But having a process clearly stated will make sure that everything's out in the public, that it's not one supervisor working this staff person, another supervisor working this staff person. And I think we come up with better solutions. And if I can help filter it, if I can, in many times, like I did with Mr. Nelson, is, you know what? I know some of what you need, but go talk to Bob because he knows the answers. And I have no problem doing that. I think that's great.
I know Weld, Riley, Penn, Ritchie, the law firm out of Eau Claire used to annually put on kind of an orientation conference. I think the entire board would go down to Eau Claire for a day or two I'm wondering if, not necessarily that firm, but inviting in somebody from the outside that can come in and really talk about the nuances of the county administrator form of government as it compares to others might be helpful. And then also a review of the personnel policies, right? Because when it comes to any appeal from our, any type of a discipline issue, the county board could be the ultimate arbiter of that. And so you want to stay out of it unless and until it, filtered up to that level, given the way our personnel policies are drafted. So I could envision, a multifaceted orientation. I think it's a really good idea.
Supervisors are going to be able to then ask questions and say, well, what about this and what about that? And I think it'd be helpful, whoever comes, that we could ask a lot of different scenarios.
I think Extension put it on. Extension has like that on for us. If I remember, we set it up, so they should have a blueprint plan of that.
Yeah, we did have unfortunately, we abbreviated our orientation because of COVID, and we brought in the lady from the WCA to talk about roles and responsibilities. But that really wasn't an orientation. It was just an overview of that. And plus, since then, we've had 2 new members. So I think if you guys are recommending this, I think that's a great idea to dedicate a full day if necessary.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we'll consider it in the works then. In the works.
WCA puts those webinars on too.
All right, how about public comments versus written public comments?
So I brought that up and I talked to Supervisor Bonneprice a little bit about it. And, and it was really about the decorum, right? I've had a number of complaints over the last couple months of the decorum with our public comment process, with doing people on WebEx, and the, certainly the language doesn't offend me. I'm a construction guy and we talk like that all day long on construction sites. But some of the language that has been done at the last couple county board meetings during public comment, and even the one that said he wasn't aware that he was making public comment when he was on mic. So I had people ask that said, if you can't control people throwing out the F word and getting that kind of, it's almost like there's almost this feeling of they're isolated. They're sitting in their home or they're sitting on a video and it's almost like they can say whatever they want, certain people. It was brought up is that would it be appropriate if we can't control that, then we've got a problem. If we can't shut it off right away, because if they're standing here right away, we'd say, hey, stop talking. You can't talk like that. I certainly would, as a chair, say, we're not going to allow you to talk like that in here. But it just seems like it rolls on and, you're looking for the mute button and you can't shut them off. And so that's what it was discussed is, do you say, hey, for committee meetings, fine, let the public comment. Today's public comment was just fine. Nothing crazy. I haven't heard it at other committee levels. It just seems like it's more at the county board. Do you consider saying, hey, if you want public comment, write it down. We can have staff read your public comment into the record that night, but somehow we got to get a handle on that, and that's why I asked for it to be discussed. Or do you just say let her rip, and I don't know. But I definitely have had complaints about the decorum from public and on the video, and us not being able to control the Effenheimers coming out. Whether you're quoting somebody else or you're saying you're sitting in your own living room saying it. I just wanted to run it through the executive committee and get your guys' input on, do we care or do I just blow it off or what?
Maybe you should put it out there. Well, actually, we're putting it out there, I guess, right now, but what does the public want? Do they want us to allow public comment like we had at the last meeting? I mean, do they want?
Oh, I heard no, they did not want
they
that.
don't. I
Yeah.
mean, they don't want if their kids are watching, and you're right, we cannot stop it or control it. It's live. Just like this is live. I mean, why couldn't we say that at least until we get back to normal? Why can't we ask that public comment be written? I mean, that was a lot of good information today on the decibels and the times, but do we have that in our
Yes, we
hands?
do. Yep, she wrote a letter to us with all those.
Well, then,
And there's more.
then do we need it read to us? I mean, I guess is my question. If we have it, it's kind of like a PowerPoint. Does someone do they have to read that to you? I don't know.
I think they do so that they know that everybody heard
it. It feels
Some
like,
of us get papers.
it feels like, I read her whole letter, the gal that talked in public comment today, I read it, but it did help hear her to say it. And I know sometimes for me, I ask the corporation counsel, will you read what this resolution really says? So to me, I think it would be appropriate if the clerk or someone would say, yeah, we've got 8 public comments today, they're in writing, and the clerk would read their names off because they wanted to get up here and say it. And then let the clerk or someone read those public comments into the record so we hear, sometimes it does help because a lot of times you get too much to read and you just, how many letters do you get? Do you really read them from front to back, every one? But I would almost rather still have that there, because then they would feel like, because there's going to be people who are going to complain about this if all they could do is write a public comment. But Malia, do you have a comment?
Well, just human nature, when you're talking about putting something in writing or appearing, whether it's in person or by video, public speaking is kind of a nerve-wracking experience for a lot of folks. The concern with written public comments is people who wouldn't otherwise, go up and speak, if they write it and know it's going to be spoken for them. I mean, you might just have volumes, and then how do you decide where to start when you've got that 30-minute time frame? But committees is where the meat of decisions should be made and a recommendation up to the full county board. So I would recommend the idea of leaving public comment as is at committee levels, where there's less likely to be a lot of public watching, other than the really high important issues, and then having the written public comment at county board, at least until things go back to whatever normal is going to look like. That's just a suggestion.
Well, we have to put so that we get it on time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a committee meeting, my emails go off, and people are making public comments. Well, I don't read it till I'm home. Same as this one. So we'd have to have them at least be like 2 hours before the meeting or something, so we can read something.
So if I could add, Mr. Chair, we actually do have a disclaimer that we created for all the committee templates and the board template that written public comment has to be received by such and such. Announcements for WebEx public comment, there's a deadline for it. So we have put that template, and that prefaces all meeting notices now.
And we do forward the information, the public comment through regardless of when it comes in, but the disclaimer says that, there's no guarantee the supervisors are going to read it or have time to read it or receive it, with less than 24 hours notice before the meeting, but we will still forward it on. So that's what the notice is.
When you receive them, can you put them in that order? So if there's more than half an hour worth, at least that order would be there.
So,
First come, first served.
well, just a question there. So if oral public comment is limited to 3 minutes, if somebody writes a voluminous letter that exceeds 3 minutes in recitation, would you cut the letter off at 3? I guess
I would.
that would just be a point I would suggest clarifying.
Is it in our rules of order? What is our rules of order say about public comment?
3 minutes, you mean?
At the county board meeting? Is it required that we have it?
I think that's arbitrary.
And then my other question, Leah, is are there other counties doing it, like that? Because I was told other counties don't allow public comment during their board meetings, but they allow it in their committee meetings. And I don't know if that's true or not.
Sure. So the rules of order, when it comes to committee meetings, the word is may, so it's not mandatory that a committee have public comment on their agenda or allow it. And let's see. And there is for Polk County Board, it says will generally be allowed, because that was the change that we made because of COVID. It'll generally be allowed except in cases where public safety, public health, or other emergent situation makes public comment impractical.
All right, I don't know where we're going with that one, but I do know that we have 8 minutes left of this meeting. Is there something on this agenda we'd like to get to in our 8 minutes?
I'd like to make a comment on the fairgrounds.
Well, let's decide whether we're gonna, we have updates here regarding the fairgrounds.
Mr. Chair, I do need the committee from the human resources standpoint to address 9D, the discussion regarding administrative review. Just leading into that, I need direction from the board. What kind of review process do you want for the administrator? Do we want a committee review? Do you want just a chairman's review with recommendation? Do you want a 360 review through ECHO similar to the one we did last year? What kind of review process does the committee want for the administrator's review?
When we hired him, was there like a 90-day or 120-day or anything?
There's an annual review, and this committee is charged with completing that review in your rules of order.
An annual, not a shorter term.
It's annual, but we're coming up on the annual.
We used to do it with Dana every year, and we had our meeting, and we would go into closed session, and we would have, Andrea was in the room with us. So, I remember those, and,
It was usually about 10 questions that,
we just,
a guideline for review, and I think that is available. We went through that guideline.
I would just do the same way we did it with Dana's review and Andrea's here. That, to me, that was thorough enough, and we got to.
So do we want to set that for October and use that template for October?
I don't want to reinvent the wheel today or at this time of year.
And then there is a closed session then we'd have to have for October.
All right.
Sure.
Well, all right, then with the chair's permission, I'll add that to the October agenda with a closed session.
Should we probably start, Mr. Chair, should we probably start at 8:30 then?
Yeah, we may want to change our meeting time because I'm finding an hour is not enough. And we have 5 minutes and another meeting starts. So,
I'm estimating the review would take half hour.
Yeah,
shall we change the time to 8:30?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with it.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
How about 7?
7? Anybody 6:30? Anybody? No?
I had them. Had them before.
My number's gone.
8:30.
is fine. Better than 7.
All right, what else on this? I mean, we need to do discussion of possible action on the ordinance 1320.
I think that can wait. That
Yeah.
was what we discussed last time about whether or not we're gonna, I know Malia worked on something. I think we could review it, and I don't think we need to send that right now.
All right, how about, we got a review of a MOU list. I don't know if can that be done in 4 minutes?
Well, I can speak to that real quickly. What I provided you guys is an overview of the most impactful MOUs we have with outside agencies. There's a summary sheet on top of it, what the MOU pertains to. I've put the MOUs in order with the sheet on top. I suggest that the board members look at that and we can discuss it in October if you want to carry it over.
All right, we'll give you a couple minutes if you want to give us an update on the fairgrounds grandstand project, or.
I don't dare, no.
Just in open session?
Is that supposed to be enclosed?
Yes. So I would like to just throw one quick comment about open session because it got brought up by another supervisor, Supervisor Pritchard. You know, and I think some of the public needs to know this, that the county, and this is for the public, the county does not run the fair. The county doesn't have any, the county owns the property and maintains the property. So the county is not the ones that are approving what kind of events that the fair does. And I just want to make sure that's out. I talked to the mayor last week or two of what was going on too with the mayor. And he told me there was concerns about this specific event, and there's concerns in the community about it. And, you know, and I told him what the county was working on, that we weren't going to approve any funding, was the general census, until the fair board got an MOU put in place with us because it's so old, and that we didn't want to fund anything until the Fair Society got approvals from the city on what their grand plans were. And so I think it's important that the public understands that's as much as we do and as the biggest role as we have in this. I just wanted to make sure that people heard that.
All right. Well, we're definitely don't have time. I don't feel.
Chair, I would ask you to continue this and start the next meeting 10 minutes late. Because I think this is an important issue.
Well,
what's going on with the city.
I think,
or we need to call another meeting in a week and deal with this. And that's fine. I mean, maybe we have to have 2 meetings a month like Environmental Services does.
yeah, or try to change it up and not. We shouldn't be pressured by a time constraint of another meeting starting. That's
Exactly.
no sense at all. But
Right. I agree.
And I mean,
What's wrong with delaying the meeting 10 or 15 minutes? What's the pressure of starting a meeting on time? Public can wait 15 minutes, half an hour,
or
an hour.
What else do we have to address here?
well, we have a closed session on here and an update regarding the fairgrounds grandstand project and an update regarding the fairgrounds MOU.
How long would we be in closed session, Chair?
I have a suggestion. Since the same topic is also on general government, but then we'd have a quorum of the county board. However, that is noticed on all of the agendas. We could continue this meeting. You'd have to suspend the rules of order and start the general government and have a joint closed session right at the beginning to talk about the negotiations.
And then there is one other option, if I can add. I'm going to request of the chair for a second GG meeting on September 24th to address some budget issues to catch up on the budget cycle. And I was going to request that of the chair at the general government meeting. So if you had to have a second meeting, you could have it on the 24th.
I like the idea, if it's legal, that if a couple of you guys can stick around from executive and we would go change the agenda, we could go right into the closed session right off top and do it right away. And then both committees are here. We can both hear the presentation and just deal with it one time. anyone that wants to choose to stay.
Be up to the chair, wouldn't it?
Well, I think that'll work. However we need to do it. We need to do what? Just suspend this meeting?
You would have to suspend the rules of order because you are going to have a quorum of the county board, but that is noticed on all agendas that there may be, so you're okay. But normally you're not supposed to have two meetings scheduled at the same time. So you would be basically calling a joint meeting. They were both scheduled at different times, but they're overlapping. Because you're not going to be making any decisions
And we're only
today.
doing it because the same closed session is on both
It's
meetings.
the exact same
And
information.
we're just gonna get, some of us are gonna get it
Right. And,
twice.
and I think what you would want to do, Mr. Chair, is you would call general government to order and then amend the agenda, moving the closed session to the
Right.
top of your agenda.
All right, so we can suspend the rules?
When you have a quorum of the county board here, yes, you can.
We suspend the rules at our next meeting, not this
Right,
meeting.
Okay,
once
not
that
now.
meeting starts.
All right, so we are gonna call the general government.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Well, we're not adjourning. We're not adjourning. Your executive meeting.
Executive is not adjourning?
No.
No.
We're gonna
Because you're gonna
suspend the
continue.
rules with the help of the, because we have a quorum of the supervisors
I
in this
see.
room. Suspend the rules to allow the closed session for general government and the executive to be held jointly.
We need a motion and a
Suspend
2/3
the rules
vote.
in this committee.
You will once the other committee is rolling. Then yes,
We've called the general government to order. All we need is our members
So you
to,
called the general government to order?
yep,
Okay.
all we need is our people to
I need to stop the WebEx and switch it over.
So, Mr. Chair, you wanted to move to recess?